Welcome back to The Empire Never Ended with Boris, Fritz, Ray, and our other Nikola, our new Nikola. We had a Nikola. We still have a Nikola, but now we got two Nikolas. Two Nikolas from Montenegro.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, he says he was born in Montenegro and he was born in Kosovo. But I guess he has that
there is an explanation for that, but
yes.
Yes, we are talking about Nikola Kavaja, we should say that.
Kavaja. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's right. Kavaja.
Not Onine Nikola.
Not Onine. No, the more like these guys probably wish they were more like this Nikola. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
Not a LARPer.
So I think the reason why the reason why Nikola Kavaja says that he was born in Montenegro is that he was born in the town of Peć, which is in Kosovo, but until 1912 it was a part of the Ottoman Empire, and during the Balkan Wars it became a part of Montenegro actually.
Yeah.
So it was in Montenegro, I guess until the end of the First World War, when it became a part of Yugoslavia. And so, he was born in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia in 1933. There was no political entity known as Montenegro at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, Peć was a part of Kosovo, which was, autonomous province inside of Serbia in the socialist Yugoslavia. But because he's of Montenegrin origin and his family is originally from Montenegro, I guess he just chose to say that he was born in Montenegro.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's a bit confusing, but yeah.
Well, our listeners left off with Nikola Kavaja escaping Yugoslavia as a young man and ending up, I think we left off in Salzburg, but we didn't continue past that yet on the timeline.
No. Although it is a bit confusing for us because we already recorded the next week's free episode.
Right.
Where
Drunk,
that
on top
journey
of that.
where that journey continues. So now we are recording this, which will be published before the episode that we already recorded.
Yes.
And so today we are doing a reenactment of an interview that Kavaja did in 2006 with a journalist called Christopher Stewart. So this was only like less than 2 years before Kavaja died. At that point, he lived in Serbia, where he came back to in 1999 during the NATO bombing of Serbia, and he came back illegally. He was let go from prison in 1997 and was supposed to be under parole until 2019, but he illegally left the U.S. Through Mexico and then some other Latin American country, I think, and then Greece and then Serbia, something like this.
Yeah.
So Christopher Stewart did this interview as a part of his research for writing a book about Arkan, which he did write and published in 2008, called Hunting the Tiger, The Fast Life and Violent Death of the Balkans' Most Dangerous Man. I haven't read that book, but I think it's the only...
I kind of don't like that title off the bat, so...
Yeah.
It is given some of his descriptions of things, I'm inclined to be not super favorable towards this journalist, but...
Yeah, are you talking about the drab
communist apartment,
the crumbling Belgrade thing?
Yeah, the crumbling capital city. It's like, shut the fuck up.
It's that Rebecca West gaze, Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's why I thought he's British, but I guess
maybe we did all assume this guy was British. That's true.
We did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Until we actually heard his voice, and he has like
it's an NPR voice.
Yeah, stereotypical kind of like concerned NPR guy voice.
Yeah.
So
maybe the book's good. We haven't read it.
We Arkan book.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to read it. I mean, I think it's the only English language book about Arkan. I think
it's not.
It's not. Mm-hmm.
No, there are plenty. But a lot of them are academic ones that cost like a fortune to read.
Academic books about Arkan, like specifically about him, or just about Serbian war criminals, or.
Well, Serbian war criminal. I think there are also books about Arkan specifically, but
okay. Well, so yeah, the interview is pretty insane, and So we decided to do this reenactment.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of new territory for us because this is an interview that we read ages ago, and it is like pretty absurd at parts. And we were thinking about like how to best incorporate this interview into a show, because it's obviously there's no audio interview that's available of it like the original. And so we decided to opt for a reenactment, which I guess you guys will tell us whether that worked or not. Because it's an experiment for us.
Don't qualify it. It's hilarious.
Well, okay.
This can't not be interesting. I mean, even if
we
royally fucked it up.
I want the feedback. I want to know. I want to know if it worked or not.
Yeah. So the interview was originally, I think, published in the Paris Review.
Yeah.
But then republished in the Independent, where we found it.
Mm-hmm.
There's also an NPR interview with Christopher Stewart about the interview with Kavaja, which also I think we'll comment on both interviews at the end of the episode, or towards the end of the episode, and then at the actual end of the episode, we'll do something else that you probably should. I think most people, it was a big thing, and it's pretty bizarre, kind of surreal thing that happened more than a year ago now, is that the CIA published that kind of really ridiculous, almost like a parody, but it's not. It's just the world that we live in. A kind of a woke ad for CIA.
Woke CIA ad. Certainly,
this world we must leave.
Remember that one.
Yeah. So we thought that, Kavaja being a CIA agent himself, also and an immigrant, with an interesting journey, as they say.
That's true.
Well, and who struggled in various ways throughout his life for recognition and so on.
Yeah,
I think when it came out, when we were talking about it, like amongst ourselves, we were like, imagine if they did a video like with somebody that actually did dirt for the CIA, and then it's like, of course, Nikola Kavaja, right?
Yes.
Like a true like psychopath assassin, cold-blooded killer for the CIA.
Yes.
Which is like, imagine him telling his, inspiring life story.
Yes. Well, thank God, I mean, like, how long has the story and perspective of the Serbian assassin been lacking in these narratives,
Truly.
I'm glad that finally we've given them a voice here on our show.
I mean, yes, those voices were lacking, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And also, so I'm reading this, his Kavaja's autobiography, and only read 1/3 of it, and we based the last 3 episodes on it and the next one, which we already recorded. So in this interview, Kavaja goes through some events that we talked about in those 2 episodes, and I'll probably comment on some things that he mentioned that will appear in the next 3 episodes. So you might want to listen to that one first before listening.
You might want to,
or no,
go
you
forward
get a sneak
in time.
Preview.
Go forward in time. Listen to that episode, and then come back to the present, and then listen to this episode.
Stop listening now. No. They get a sneak preview for what's to come, and with more explanation.
Why are you so anti-time travel? Every time I suggest time travel, you're like, it's impossible.
I mean, with hallucinogens, anything is possible, but
that's all I'm saying. Yeah. Take some mushrooms, listen to this episode, and then pretend you've listened to the next one.
Yeah.
All right. So, if y'all are good and stoned out there, let's get into this interview, huh?
Yes.
And then we'll meet afterwards and talk about some of the differences and some of the particularities of it.
Yes.
Alrighty. Here we go.
Nothing.
Presenting the first ever, I don't know, but he's had audio interviews. I was going to say the first ever audio interview, but he's had audio interviews. Is that not correct?
In Serbo-Croatian, he did. I'm not sure about English.
I've yet to find one in English.
There we go. The first ever audio interview with Nikola Kavaja in English, as performed by the Tenepod Players.
Yes.
Take it away. Kavaja is 73, but he looks no older than 60. He adheres to a strict weight training routine that gets him up every weekday before the sun. He is squarely built and muscular, with white hair cut to a military trimline and a fighter's mashed-up nose. Except for the fine white thread of mustache, he is cleanly shaven. In his dress, he favors black trousers, black shirts, and black combat boots. Our conversation took place over 3 mornings, with classical music playing softly in the background. Kavaja spoke slowly and quietly, with an air of determined precision. At times, he paused to place his hand on his forehead in search of a long-forgotten detail. As he spoke, Kavaja stared off in the distance, at nothing at all, or else looked down at his booted feet. You were a Second World War prisoner, a communist soldier, a CIA hitman, a hijacker, and now a fugitive on the run, among other things. Where to begin?
Write down my name. Nikolakavaja. You can call me Nick.
Well, that's a start.
It's a long story. Do you want some schnapps?
Oh, no, thanks. I'm fine with water.
Water's for pussies.
Well, most of the time I'd agree, but 10:30 in the morning is a little early for me to be drinking shots of schnapps.
It's a hello. You drink some schnapps with me. Do we drink together?
Okay.
That's better. Salute. So, I was born in Montenegro in 1933. In 1941, when Hitler attacked Yugoslavia, my father and mother and I were transferred to separate prison camps in Albania. My brothers went to the war in October 1944 when the Russians forced the Germans out of the Balkans. I went back to Peć to find my mother, but she wasn't there. No one was there. I had to fight for myself. This is the first time I killed someone that year, a German soldier. He was heavily wounded and leaning on top of a well. I was getting water. I walked up to him, took his leg, and tossed him like garbage.
You weren't afraid?
My dick, was I ever afraid? I hated them. I couldn't find my family anywhere. I searched for months. Eventually, I found my mother in Vojvodina. I learned that 2 of my brothers were killed in the war, so I joined Air Force Academy. They made me into a war pilot. Around that time, my brother was thrown in jail for being anti-communist. He wasn't, but Tito was a suspicious man. Tens of thousands of military officers finished their careers in prison. They all fought for Tito, and then they were thrown in jail for bullshit reasons. What kind of a leader does that?
You never liked Tito?
I hated him. Around that time, I became a member of an underground anti-communist group. That is where my life really started. My commander, Milutin Avramovich, was in the Air Force with me in Sombor. He knew about my brothers who were imprisoned and killed. He had cousins that went to the jail too. And that's why he started giving me top secret missions, I think. Because my hatred was so personal.
What was the first job?
He had me paint walls of the military barracks. Long live Soviet Union, down with Tito, down with Communist Party. It was a test, I think. But I did it. And for me, it was funny. What the fuck kind of thing, you know?
And how did Tito like your sense of humor?
When I wrote that, it was Saturday evening. By Sunday morning, military intelligence officers were searching for who did it. There was a huge alarm. There were 4,000 soldiers at our barracks and none of us could leave. After 2 or 3 days of investigations, they started to lock people up. They arrested a major who was in charge of security that evening, and he got 7 years in prison. 2 of my friends were also arrested and sentenced to the jail.
You weren't afraid you'd get caught?
Who would have known? I was into football and girls. It made me laugh. Big assignment came next. It was in June 1953. The order was to burn the gas tanks at the airport in Sombor. I knew all of these bases like I know my room. My commander gave me some time bombs and I set them up near the tanks which held millions of gallons of petrol. I placed bombs around the tanks And when they went off, there was a massive explosion. It was incredible. I was far away, but I could see yellow flames in the sky. I realized it wasn't a joke anymore. I was in big shit. Police swarmed to the base and all the towns nearby. They arrested hundreds. I knew 7 of them. One was a major hero. He got the death penalty for nothing. And others died in the prison.
And you didn't feel guilty about this?
Guilt, my dick. You don't know about guilt. Schnapps?
I'm still working on this one. Thanks.
After my commander was arrested, I was told that a lot of officers were arrested at the airport. And they also asked about me and my friend Sveto. I took my machine gun, pistol, 3 grenades, compass, binoculars, and bag of clothes, and I became a deserter. That's a very serious thing, punishable by death. I knew that they would chase us. Sveto and I decided to cross the border illegally into Austria. To get to the border, we walked only at night. It wasn't easy terrain. There were mountains, canyons, and lots of snow. We slept in the woods. Sveto got so tired he couldn't walk, so I put him on my back. Then we came to this mountain. It was covered in heavy snow up to my waist in places, and temperatures were below 0. It would have taken days to go over, but there was a tunnel to the mountain for trains. I decided to take the risk and go through the tunnel. So I put Sveto down and he followed. The tunnel was a kilometer long. Sveto kept falling, but I pretended not to see him because I couldn't carry him no more. Somehow we got through. Just before the border there was a canyon. If you made one wrong step, you fall to your death. The darkness was deep and I couldn't see much. I heard footsteps. I turned around and there was a shadow moving along the mountain road. We couldn't run away because we were so tired. I aimed my machine gun at Shadow's direction. It came nearer. I saw that it was a woman. She said to us, "Bless you." She had a hood on. I pulled back her hood and asked who she was. "I'm a teacher," she said. I asked for her documents. She was telling the truth, so I let her go. I should have killed her because I know she was going to report us. I don't know why I didn't. We had some trouble at the border. Someone shouted stop, and then there were shots in our direction. We were in the open space. Behind us were woods. We got down and fired back. The fight went on for 10 minutes. I went through 2 clips and threw 3 hand grenades, but we managed to get back into the woods and retreat to our border. I fired all but 7 bullets. We walked for 1 hour or so and tried the border again. This time was worse. We got ambushed from 3 directions. It was Yugoslav People's Army, my own fucking army. They surrounded us, 3 of them with machine guns. The commander approached and asked where we are going. I reached into my jacket and said, "We are visiting Svatko Lacovic." The commander said, "There is no one by that name. Where are your arms?" I said, "We don't have any. We just have gloves." When I took out the gloves, I drew my pistol, put it to the forehead, and pulled the trigger.
What about the guys with guns?
I had 7 bullets left. I could have taken them all, but my gun jammed. From behind, I was hit with machine gun and lost consciousness. Sveto just stood there. When I came to, there were 20 or so soldiers around. We were moved to jail on border. One morning, they took us out and put us against the wall of the barracks. I thought they were going to shoot us. My legs and hands were in chains. The commander division marched all of the troops, all 5,000 of them, and gave a speech. He said, "From our communist hands, no one will escape. These men were organizing against our nation. We spit on all these traitors." After that, all of them lined up and spat on us one by one. One of my cousins came around 4 times. I couldn't believe it. 5,000 people spat on me. It's a psychological thing, a show to boost the morale.
Pour me some schnapps.
I don't want to talk about the trial, about being beaten up every day, every night. I was sentenced to 18.5 years. After 4 years, I escaped to Austria, where I was picked up and shipped to a U.S. Army based in Stuttgart. They thought I was the KGB, but after months of interviews, 3 intelligence officers introduced themselves and offered me political asylum.
And is that how you started working for the CIA? How did they ask you to join them?
They asked me my dick. They didn't ask. They checked me out for 7 months. They thought I was KGB. I had to prove myself. I bombed some communist buses, Yugoslavian buses in Vienna. It was their way of testing my loyalty. They liked me because of my history. I was young and fearless and hated the communism. So I started to dirty work jobs against Yugoslavia, against Russia. Sabotage, spying, exposing double agents, assassinations. I did some very bad things, but I accepted my destiny. In 1959, I uncovered a gang of Yugoslavians smuggling arms to Algeria. They would come in dressed up like priests. I tracked them down and killed them. There was never any reports about the people who disappeared. They might as well have never lived.
So you were like God, deciding who would and wouldn't die.
My superiors make the final decisions. I killed one person who's on my conscience. She was a double agent from East Germany. I was sleeping in the desert in a tent because it was the only place safe from the war. I received an order from military intelligence to kill this woman. When I got her, I didn't know what I was going to do. She was probably 23 years old. I asked her family name and where she lived. There would be no official report. She would just disappear. And I wanted to send a message to her family where they can find her.
Why her?
There was something about her. I just wanted to do her a favor. Even when I was in prison in the United States, I dreamt about her. She was not the first one or the last one, but I feel sorry for her. She was so young, and she was a proud girl. She spat on me.
And you shot her.
What do you think? I didn't rape her. I told her to walk ahead of me, and I shot her in the back.
Did you think she deserved that?
I never worry about killing an innocent person. I wasn't trying to kill innocent people. I killed people on my level, soldier to soldier, agent to agent. It's not my job to think about innocence or guilt. She didn't ask for mercy. She was probably guilty. But she stays with me. No one else does.
And how were you paid?
Paid by the job. For the bigger jobs, like assassinating Tito, I would be paid $15,000. For most jobs, $10,000. They dropped the money off at my house.
You didn't assassinate Tito, but you tried?
Killing Tito was a big mission. For almost 1 decade, I hunted him. I was never a traitor. I wanted to save my country. That's why I was good for this mission. I was ready to give my life for it. If I died 1 second after I killed Tito, I wouldn't care. He killed my 3 brothers. He destroyed my country. I went to jail. I lost everything. In 1963, I got information that Tito was coming to North and South America for a tour. Our intelligence said it would be easier to kill him in South America because security would be much thinner down there. Tito always traveled with his own agents, about 125 state security men. These men went a few months in advance to clean up all the political dissidents. When I say clean up, I mean jail or kill. They had files on these people. Of course, they had a big file on me too. The government wanted me dead. The State Security Service sent people to try and assassinate me. When I returned to Serbia in the 90s, a Montenegrin man came to me and said, I was supposed to kill you in 1976 in the States, but I couldn't find you. We laughed about it. Anyway, to kill Tito, I worked with Dragiša Kašiković and a third Serbian guy I won't name because he's still undercover. We weren't maniacs. We didn't just decide, okay, we're going to kill Tito. We got our orders from CIA and planned it carefully. Rio de Janeiro was our first shot. Dragiša went first. He got fake documents and traveled as a Mexican journalist with a sombrero and video camera. I followed with the third guy. I took a Colt 45 and 357 Magnum and I was disguised as Catholic priest with a long black robe and a black hat. We had informants in the town who provided us with the information. We knew Tito liked to go out on the town, eat and see chicks. I waited for word that he was out on the town and then I would shoot him. But Brazil was not our time. Tito stayed in the house throughout his stay. He didn't move from building for 2 days. We didn't see him come and we didn't see him go. One day he was there and the other day he is gone, like a ghost.
Was that a major letdown for you?
I didn't panic. From Brazil, I followed him to Santiago, Chile and to Mexico City. Then I got a message to come to Washington, D.C. right away because Tito was on his way. That was the most dangerous place for us as a group. The FBI was searching for us. They were working with the Yugoslav State Security Service.
I thought you worked with the CIA.
But CIA and FBI don't share informants, come on. They were rival organizations. There were rewards for our capture from the FBI. My last attempt to kill him was in 1971 at Camp David in Maryland. He was going there to visit Richard Nixon. No one can carry a gun around Camp David. But I went alone, dressed as Maryland State Trooper. I couldn't get on the property, but I got up into a tree where I could see the chopper with binoculars. I had my sniper rifle with me. My thought was, at some point, Tito would take a walk into the woods. He liked to take walks, it was beautiful. I thought, who wouldn't want to take a walk? I waited all day and night.
In a tree? You didn't sleep?
No, I couldn't kill him if I'm asleep. You don't know anything about these kind of things. You fucking sleep, you fucking joker.
Did Tito ever go for a walk?
Never. After 2 days, he left and that was it. Nothing. So I didn't get him. But I did a lot of damage to his regime and to communism.
You had a Serbian terrorist organization, didn't you?
It was a freedom group. I called it Freedom for the Serbian Fatherland, SOPO. We got money from the CIA. We bombed Yugoslav embassies in Washington, Ottawa, consulates in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Toronto. Bin Laden stole our strategies. But after that, State Department got a lot of pressure from Tito to track us down and extradite us. It was a fucking big mess.
Did they catch up with you?
No, not until 1978. I was in New York on my way to a friend's house and more than 20 agents with guns ambushed me on 3rd Avenue. They arrested over 100 of us. A judge in Chicago found us guilty but delayed the sentencing for 1 month. I got out on $250,000 bail. The judge released everyone except for Stoiljko Kajevic, who went by the name Priest. He helped me lead SOPO. The FBI thought he was the most dangerous. That was a mistake. After the trial, I told Priest I was ready to go do a hijacking I'd been talking about. My plan was to land in Chicago, pick Priest up, and then fly to Belgrade and crash into the Communist Central Committee building.
So that's what you did when you got out on bail? You hijacked a plane?
First, I returned home to see my family. One day, I get a call from Priest. He says, "Send me the memorandum." I say, for who? President Carter, he said. That night, I went into my basement where I made bombs. I made 2 of them built into beer bottles. The telephone rang, and this is funny. It was FBI guy from Chicago, Al King. He said, "Hi Nick, how are you doing?" I told him, "I'm making a bomb for tomorrow." He thought I was joking. It was a big scandal in the trial later on. You can check the court files, it's all there. After I finished, I went upstairs. I took some long socks from my daughter's room and stuffed the bottles in my trouser legs. I put on my trousers, looked in the mirror, and you couldn't see anything was in there. I was ready, and I went to sleep around 1 a.m.
How could you sleep?
I had done 100 more difficult operations. I never feared that I would make a mistake. I woke up at 5 just like any other day. My wife, she woke up with me and she cooked me steak for breakfast. That's all I eat, steaks. I say goodbye like any other morning. I had the bomb strapped to my leg in dynamite in leather suitcase. A cab took me to the airport. I ordered the brandy at the airport bar and relaxed. I checked in and waited by security for the right moment to pass. I knew if police officer stopped me, I would kill him. I would have to kill him. I was going to get on that plane. That's all that was on my mind. I saw albino couple with lots of camping equipment passing through security, so I went with them. They set the alarms off. The police stopped them, but not me. I got on the plane to Chicago. It was American Airlines 727. My seat was number 23 on the left side of the plane. Next to me was a woman from Poland who had never been to the United States. Imagine that. She has to get on my plane. We drink a brandy together, we talk. 15 minutes before we landed, I say goodbye to her and went to the bathroom. I got the bombs ready, then went to the cockpit. The stewardess asked me what I need. I say, give me the keys to the cabin. She was paralyzed. I put my hand in her pocket, took the key and opened the cabin. There were 4 pilots. They didn't hear me open the door, which when one of them tried to stand, I forced him down. His name was Mitchell. I show him the explosives and say, this is my plane now. I am responsible for your lives. If you make a mistake, we all go to the God. After a few minutes, Mitchell asked me what I want, money or what. I told him to get in touch with FBI. Al King got on the line. He was absolutely crazy. He said, Nick, you're late for the court. I say, listen, in 5 minutes, I'm going to fly over the courthouse. I told you last night I was making bombs. He said, why you make jokes? I said, you'll see me in 5 minutes. I flew over the courthouse 3 or 4 times. Stewardess brought me a brandy. Eventually, we land. I park the plane at the far edge of the airport. There were 128 passengers and 8 crew members. Hundreds of police surrounded the plane on the runway. FBI asked me what I wanted. I said, I want priest. Passengers kept asking for things. One woman said she's going to give birth. I said, what the fuck is going on? I'm not a doctor. I'm a terrorist. That's great.
This is insane.
The FBI sent one lawyer to the plane to talk me out of it. But I said it was too late. Then he begged me to release the passengers. That was the riskiest moment. I was worried that the FBI would attack. But I had the bomb trigger in hand and I told them not to mess around because I would blow the plane up in 1 second. The briefcase of dynamite was at my chest. I gave the passengers 5 minutes to get off. You should have seen these fat Negroes. It was hilarious. Looking at them, you wouldn't expect them to be so fast. But they were off in seconds.
Oh my God.
At the end, there were 4 people left. Mitchell, co-pilot, my lawyer, and stewardess.
And what about Priest?
Priest finally called me. But it wasn't good. He said, Brother Nikola, I am not coming with you. And that is the most difficult moment. I sacrificed everything for this. My wife, my kids, my life. We had a deal. We were going to take the plane to Yugoslavia. It was his job to show me the building we were going to hit. I hadn't been back to Yugoslavia for decades. The Communist Central Committee building was built in the 1960s. I don't know the land. I don't know what to do at this point. But he got off the phone and it was over. I told them to fuel the plane and then I told Mitchell we are leaving. There were still 40, 50 cars following the plane as we drove down the runway. Mitchell asked me what was the plan and I said New York. On the way, I demanded a 707, much bigger plane with a new crew to meet me at JFK. No one knew what I was going to do. When we landed, the 707 was there. We pulled up. I took Mitchell and the co-pilot and tied them to me. I wanted to make sure that I didn't get killed on the way across and that the new pilots were not imposters. There were hundreds of police snipers, but I had this living wall around me. So, after we leave New York, I finally tell my lawyer the plan. You should have seen his eyes. He was a baby. We flew for hours. But then I had second thoughts. I was ready to die, but I didn't know where Central Communist Building was in Belgrade. I didn't want to kill regular civilians. This was not my job. Never my job. I wanted to kill Tito and the biggest symbol of the Communist Party, not go down as the guy who killed the innocent people. My friend betrayed me and I lost the target.
So you're up there with a stolen 707, a bunch of hostages, and nowhere to go.
I didn't want to lose my life for nothing. That was the point. But you don't have time to think. My lawyer said that Ireland didn't have extradition agreement with the United States. I'd get political asylum and I would be safe. So we landed there. I gave up the explosives and let everyone go. But the negotiations started between the authorities of Ireland, my lawyer, and the states. Of course, they all betrayed me. Ireland sent me to the United States, and that's it. This time it was for real. I was in prison from 1979 to 1997. First, I went to Marion Prison in Illinois, solitary confinement. Noriega was in the same place. I never left my cell. I had 3 shirts, 3 pair of trousers, 3 towels, and 2 blankets from like World War I. I had 1 mouse friend who visited me at night. There was no regular toilet. It was in the floor, and you had to be a good pilot to get everything in there. I did push-ups, thousands of them in one day. And I thought about my wife and kids, and I thought about Tito.
And after 20 years, they let you out.
Yeah, it was a long time. And I'm on the parole until 2019.
So, how did you get back to Serbia?
I'm supposed to be in the States, but I left. I didn't ask anybody. Now I can't go back or they send me to prison. I can't see my wife or kids. I went to Mexico, then Brazil, then South Africa. From there, I went to Athens and then Serbia.
How were you treated when you returned to Serbia?
I had a reception at the military bunker in the mountains. It was early 1999 when Kosovo was going on. They were cooking mushrooms. That's shit for me. I only eat steak, I tell them. We need to fight on their territory. Let's go to Albania and Macedonia and fight the Albanians that way. This is the only way we are going to win. But they didn't listen. And a few months later, they bombed Belgrade and the war was over.
Do you have enemies?
I have lots of enemies. Ex-communists, state security service on Tito's day. But I'm not afraid. I have protection. And I can take care of myself. If someone wanted to assassinate me, I know how they do it because I was assassin myself. You see this? This is my best friend in all life. It's a German gun from before the World War II. Made in 1938. Luger, 9mm. Very good gun.
Is it loaded?
Not right now.
What's the point in having a gun under your table if it's not loaded?
You know nothing about guns, brate. There are bullets in it, but they are not engaged. I can engage in 1 second, brate. My dick. You're a stupid man.
So, you're still ready to fight?
I'm still strong. I'm working out every day except Saturday and Sunday. My hands have the scars from explosions, explosives, but I can still get down on the floor and do push-ups. I do 200 push-ups, squats like this, off the side of the bed. At one time, I can do 3,000.
And how many people have you killed so far?
There are many things I can't even tell you. How many I killed is not even important. I count to 17, then I stop counting.
17?
It's just a number. My first kill was when I was 14. And my last was, I don't know, maybe 1976. But I'm not going to talk about that. I probably shouldn't say the things I have said. I have a wife and kids in the United States still.
What does it feel like to assassinate someone?
What the fuck, brate?
After such an extreme life, it must be hard to settle down, call it quits.
It's not over. I still fuck good. I have a couple of young girls. You see this one here? Her tits, her hair. I also have other jobs to do, but we won't talk about that. I have money and girls, and that's a good life for me. I've got a house in Montenegro, big apartment in Novi Sad, and I have this apartment in Belgrade. I'm set up.
I see pictures on your wall of Hitler and Stalin and Mussolini. Are they idols?
These are big men.
And big murderers.
American presidents killed too. Come on.
How do you think you will be remembered?
Evil.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're back.
Wow, what enthusiasm.
Yeah? Smooth, no? Yeah. So that was the interview. Pretty strange dude.
Pretty insane, dude. Yeah,
Guy's got some stories, some details.
Yes. A noticeably different attitude than he has in his autobiography that I'm currently reading.
Yes.
It's a bit looser.
And
unedited.
much more nihilist, and he concludes that he will be remembered as an evil person.
Yeah.
Which is not the impression he's trying to make in his book at all.
When was the book written? or published? Or both?
For sure in the 90s.
Okay, because this is substantially later then. This is like 2006 or something, right? Because he dies in what?
2008, I think.
2008, yeah. So these are his.
I mean, this is where he's
here.
like, water is for pussies. It's 10 a.m.
Yes.
Start drinking.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm an evil murderer for the CIA, which is not like what the. So I mean, so he also says some things that are different than how he describes them in the book. So, for example, one difference that I noticed, in which you will hear about in next week's episode, is that when he describes how he was recruited for the anti-communist officers organization while he was still in Yugoslavia in, I think, 53 or something like this, he says that immediately the first thing that he did, that we talked about, was writing the graffiti.
Yeah.
And then like wanting to do a sabotage, which he doesn't mention here. Like in the book, he says they wanted to blow up the motor department of the base, something like this. And then that someone else blew up the gasoline tanks on the base.
Yes, different story here.
And then later on, he was recruited for the organization. Here in the interview, he says that right away he was receiving, tasks and orders from Major Avramovich, the guy he was his contact with the secret anti-communist organization, and that he ordered him to write the graffiti and then everything else. So very different.
Well, he says that he did the explosions. That he did the petrol.
Yes. Which and he explains how Major Avramovich gave him a time bomb that he placed and everything. But in the actual autobiography, he says that while they were trying to do this other sabotage, someone blew up the gasoline tanks, and no one ever found out who it was. So I don't know where he was lying. Maybe he was more. I don't know, because it's strange. Because he said in that same book how he and his friend killed some Yugoslav border guards, and such things. But then why would he lie that he didn't blow up these gasoline tanks?
Yeah,
and later claim that he did. It's a bit strange. Also, a difference is that in the autobiography, he kind of skips the whole Algeria period in 1958, 1959. Here, he says that he was assassinating people while there.
Yep.
And assassinating Yugoslavs who were transferring arms to the Algerian liberation fighters.
Well, not only Yugoslavs, from what I understand. I didn't get that. For example, the woman that he killed, that he had some trouble with processing. I didn't understand that she was Yugoslav.
No, he mentions
no. She's not. He's German. But he says that he came across a gang of Yugoslavs that were smuggling.
Dressed as priests or something like this. Yeah,
which is something that he later does as well.
Yes, dressed as a priest. Yes, while trying to kill Tito. Yeah, but he was, I think, killing all kinds of people. And in the book, he says that his marriage kind of ended more than was bad in that period when he was in Algeria, and he says because he had his obligations towards the CIA. So the implication is that he was working for the CIA in Algeria. Although the interviewer Stewart, in the NPR interview that they did with him about this interview, he says that Kavaja, while in Algeria, was working for the French Foreign Legion and doing the assassinations for them, which is not what Kavaja says in the interview. And in the books, he says that he was working for the CIA. I guess he could have been doing both.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure the CIA did stuff, subcontracted some stuff to the French Foreign Legion as well. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Sure, but, he tells us that he was recruited for the CIA before he went to Algeria already.
Right.
Like he was doing work for them in Salzburg while in Austria. So I don't know, why this interviewer kind of, doesn't mention the CIA at all in the NPR interview, although it is mentioned in the interview with Kavaja.
Well, didn't the guy who interviewed Christopher in the NPR interview, I think, didn't he say something like, well, did you just call the CIA and ask them? And Christopher responds,
yes,
no.
You're right. Yeah.
No, I didn't. Yeah, he didn't really.
But he
follow
said
up
that
on
that the Paris Review fact checked everything.
he did say that.
Which, Ray, you brought up an interesting point about when he said fact checked everything and confirmed it to be true. You're like, well, how the fuck would he be able to how would they be able to fact check which officer in this anti-communist, this like shadowy anti-communist group that there's almost no information about within the Yugoslav army gave him this and that order. So,
which was, destroyed in the 1950s. I doubt the Paris Review was like going through Yugoslav archives and,
no, for sure not.
Trying to find out something about them.
Yeah, the problem with this interview is that it also jumps ahead into episodes that we haven't recorded yet, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like
it kind of announces that, yes, it announces something that we'll talk about in the next few episodes. And then we'll be able to compare how differently was he talking about them in the autobiography. And I suspect it was differently, a different story than in this interview. Because in this interview, he clearly gave up on everything and his image and has, problems, obviously.
Yeah.
Also, his attitude, like, obviously changed. I mean, so he has portraits of Mussolini, Hitler, and Stalin on his wall.
Yep.
And, at least in the parts of the book that I read, he didn't like Nazis and was kind of, at first, really taken aback when he visited his anti-communist meetings and there were, like, Nazi collaborators there and was kind of confused by that. Obviously, you would say, okay, he was in an anti-communist terrorist group and then he has a photo of Stalin on his wall. But is that really a contradiction? Like, who killed more communists than Stalin?
Yeah. He just says that they're big men when he's asked about these portraits. That's it.
And that's pretty consistent with that kind of dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are real men.
Yes.
Like, also, I don't agree with them politically, but they're men who did things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, mostly killing people.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if you're an assassin, then I guess you admire the people who killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I thought was interesting is that when he's asked about like how he would be paid for these things, he says that he would have gotten paid. So you'd get like paid $10,000 per hit or whatever.
Yeah.
Which 60s money is pretty good money, but that he would get paid only $15,000 for killing Tito, which seems to me like a pretty small amount of money for doing that kind of hit. No, I mean, like...
Yes. And he explicitly says that killing Tito was also a CIA job.
Right.
Which is totally contrary to what Father Kavaja was saying in his book about the same attempts. So Kavaja explicitly said that, yes, they were connected with the CIA and did work with them, although he doesn't really talk about what they did for the CIA, but that killing Tito was against the interests of the United States.
Yeah.
And that their connection, the George Mussolini, the Serbian guy in the CIA, told him, straight, like, listen, Tito is important for us. You will not have our support to assassinate him.
So I think that's kind of bullshit. I'm going to say that maybe that $15,000 wager comes from like local Chetniks more than the CIA.
Yes. I could also believe, though, that there are conflicting parties within the CIA that have very different ideas about what's going on. I mean, we're not looking at like a well-oiled machine either when we talk about them, especially in this period.
Yeah, but I mean, like, killing Tito was, I think, off like I don't think that would have gotten approval from anybody.
No, it didn't make sense to like.
It didn't make sense.
Like Nixon,
but that doesn't mean it wasn't possible. But they didn't really run stuff by everybody all the time either. They often just did shit.
No,
and they weren't always communicating with other branches. So I mean,
CIA,
fuck knows. Yeah.
Well, yes. For example, when
highly
they killed Kennedy, they didn't seek approval from Kennedy to kill him. So
yeah.
But the way both Kavaja and Kavaja describe these attempts, they're very amateur.
Yeah.
So I believe if they actually had some kind of support from the CIA, it would be done better. I suspect. I mean, maybe not. But it
I mean,
was
the
very,
CIA doesn't have a great track record of successful hits sometimes either.
that's true.
I mean,
but at
Cuba
least
is
they,
a great example of
like
that.
at least they would like do something. Like, Kavaja and his friends, mostly when they tried, they just kind of appear and then they saw Tito and they're like, oh, I guess we didn't do it. Let's go home.
Yeah,
like
right.
they never like fired a shot at him.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. I mean, I think that like he portrays himself to be much more of like a badass commando than he actually was.
Sure.
Like this whole Camp David thing, I'm also inclined to believe that he was really far away from like any potential. Like he was banking on Tito going for a walk in the woods, basically. Right.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that he was pretty far away and that he'd never really had a chance.
No.
I don't know. I watched this interview with this guy that was part of like Tito's security detail.
Mm-hmm.
It was recorded like sometime in the last decade on like Serbian tabloid TV. And they're asking him about, I guess he wrote a book about like assassination attempts against Tito. And he says that he saw Kavaja in front of the White House with Boško Radonjić, which we'll talk about in the next episode. And like confirms that story as being true, but says that basically no attempt on Tito was ever significant enough for them to be like concerned, except for one that happened within Yugoslavia by like a Ustaša terrorist who got within like a couple meters of Tito on this like commemoration of Avnoj, of the Anti-Fascist Council of National Liberation or whatever. I'm inclined to believe that like most of what Kavaja says is kind of about their assassination attempts, and we see this with Father Kajic too. It seems like they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They like showed up at these things like drunk as fuck in sombreros,
right?
Or like like passing,
which he mentions in this interview. He's consistent
like,
about the sombreros.
Passing out in cars, like. It seems like they were like, they knew that they thought they were on a mission. They knew they were on a mission, but like they weren't anywhere close to doing the deed.
Yeah.
And and like if they had support from the CIA, right, they would have had better intelligence on like, the exact moment when Tito leaves his, between when he gets in from one building to the car or something like that. And the crucial moment to take a shot.
Yeah.
This dude sat in a fucking tree for 2 days.
Right.
Waiting for Tito to show up in, I guess, a Maryland State Trooper's uniform, which he got from God knows where.
I
mean, I doubt that, if he had come across like a Secret Service guy in that uniform with his accent, that they would have believed him for a fucking second. You know what I mean? Like, Maryland.
Yeah. I think it started to feel more like an obsession than even a hatred at a certain point. I like the way that he phrased it when he said he was in prison between 79 and 97. And he says, I did push-ups, thousands of them a day. And I thought about my wife and kids and Tito. Like that's where
yes.
that says something, I think.
I mean, he was in prison between 79 and 97. Tito died in 1980. So he was thinking about Tito long after he was dead.
Yes.
And immediately when he was, let go out of prison, he escaped America and never saw his children again, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if they minded.
Yeah. Also, wait, I want to say something.
Did you want to say he was poisoned?
No.
By a single shot of cocaine in his drink, which apparently is a going theory.
No.
It wasn't the years of eating only steak and drinking alcohol. He was poisoned.
Yeah, the eating only steak thing I love.
At the young age of 75.
He's like, yeah, I don't need any of that vegetable bullshit. Like, only steak.
Yes. He's like, got the Jordan Peterson diet.
He comes back to Yugoslavia and they're cooking mushrooms. Like, that's not for me, baby. Give me steak.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
That's where his time in the U.S., I think, shines through. He developed a taste for steak.
I'm absolutely sure that he murdered people and assassinated people.
Oh,
Yeah.
for
But,
sure.
He wanted in his autobiography to portray himself as this kind of noble anti-communist fighter and so on.
Freedom fighter.
But I think freedom fighter, especially against Tito. But I think a lot of people that he killed were actually, it was hard for him to show him as some kind of a noble guy because he was doing very dirty murders for the CIA. So he doesn't really talk about what he actually did in the book, and kind of skips whole years of that kind of work. But we know that he mentions that they did things not only against Yugoslav communists, but against Cuban communists and against American communists as well.
Yeah, that I'm very curious about.
Yeah.
And I guess against the Algerians, right?
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. I'll read that book until the end, and so we'll talk more if he says anything more about any of that.
Right on.
So with the hijacking, it is interesting to compare his version of it here in this interview to what we had already talked about in the Kayevich episodes, where Father Kayevich is called up from prison, taken somehow by surprise that his old buddy Kayeva here has hijacked an airline in his name. And in that story, right, in Kayevich's version, Kayevich had nothing to do with this, right? That's his narrative. And in the interview we just read, Nikola here is saying that he planned it with Kayevich, more or less. And the Kayevich sort of abandoned him in that time.
Yeah, that he was betrayed by him.
Betrayed, yeah.
Yes. Although I think that like other people who were in the trial, other Sopo people, I think kind of share Father Kajevich's opinion of Kavaja that I saw. They said like how really Kavaja made things much worse for them with the things that he said in the court and the hijacking and everything, that they all got a much like longer prison time because of him.
Yeah, because he told the Fed, "I'm making bombs," and
Yes, that's the best part. Yeah, that was the best part. Making bombs out of beer bottles.
He wasn't exactly subtle.
And he said, and he said, "I'm a terrorist" and such things. Not a freedom fighter. He used the terrorist word, and and he was on parole, and then like while on parole, which he's a terrorist on parole, and then like hijacks a plane. And I saw somewhere there's a document in one of the books that I have where like the judge who let him out of prison to hijack a plane is like totally like crushed and saying how this is the worst mistake he ever made, and which is like,
I mean, to be fair, the 70s, I mean, that was the height of like plane hijacking era, right? I mean, that's when like anybody could just hijack a fucking plane and fly to wherever. It was pretty much like that until 9/11, right? The amount of hijackings, there were a lot of hijackings that would happen, very few would end up with like human lives lost. Like people would just want to like land somewhere and do whatever. Kavaja is like a classic example of that. Like there were so many, like, I mean, he got out of it relatively easy by our standards today, but like by in the 70s, like plenty of people were hijacking planes and not getting sentenced to life and shit.
Yeah, although he wasn't a parole for during a trial for terrorism, so that's a bit ridiculous.
He's a white Serbian man who's proud of it. Like, you think if Father Kayevich, like, got out of prison, was tight with his, like, whatever, like, black Muslim guys, they hijacked a plane, I think the story would have ended a little bit differently.
Yes. Well, I mean, it ended very differently, and they didn't even hijack a plane.
Right.
Right, yeah. So do you think that Christopher had a interpreter with him, and that this was because do you think Kayeva says things like "my dick" in English? Because that sounds like a bad translation.
I was thinking about that as well. Yeah.
I mean, he could speak English, obviously, right? Because I mean, he was a machinist.
He was in
Patterson,
prison.
He was in prison there for
years.
He
was in prison for years. I mean, he speaks English for sure.
Yeah, but it's just strange to see "my dick" doesn't translate that well.
I know.
Somehow.
That's part of the weird thing with reading that interview, right?
Yeah.
Is that like it's clearly not Both the fact that they say things like my dick, but then also everything is grammatically correct.
Yeah, it's a strange mix.
He's like, for whom am I going to
Yeah.
You know he didn't say that, but you know he did say my dick, but you don't know whether it's
right
a translation or
Yeah, it is strange. It's hard to figure out what his voice is in that.
Yeah. Ray, do you think that the interview was translated or that he did it in English?
Or maybe some mix. Maybe it was like Serblish,
I don't know. Because in some of these books, that like huge monography on Kavaja, the great man, has like many documents from like the US press. And it says how Kavaja speaks in broken English, but is you can understand him, something like this.
Okay. Huh.
But this is maybe from the 80s or something like this. So maybe he, learned better English in prison.
I mean, he was in prison for a long time. There's no way he doesn't speak English. But him saying my dick all the time does not, that's not what...
That's not something you would learn in
ever says
English
in
slang.
English.
Yeah.
Yeah, why does he always say schnapps as well? Like, doesn't say rakia or brandy or anything.
I can kind of believe that, though, if he's offering it to a foreigner.
That actually does make sense. A lot of people use the term schnapps for rakia because there's no...
Yeah.
Brandy has never been like a sufficient translation for what rakia is.
It's got no soul. And what about
people
silly?
Say schnapps.
He calls him a silly guy. I don't know. I think we might have fixed it in our version, but he does say silly, which is also something you wouldn't really imagine this man saying.
Yeah, I don't.
You silly man.
Silly.
Yeah. Unclear some of this.
It's like Nikola Kavaja being like, "You silly Billy," like.
Yeah. For whom is this? Would you care for some more schnapps, you silly Billy?
Yes. Well, he does listen to classical music, which is,
That's true.
Something.
Dude was also in like federal prison for like 20 years.
Yes. I guess he's hard to pin down. Hard as
hell. Like,
he also did spend a lot of time in the famous Salzburg restaurant Göring.
Yes.
And visited the Mozart festival there. So
we're getting ahead of ourselves. That's next week.
Well, yeah. I told people that we'll talk about something from next week.
There you go. There it is. The Mozart festival. Huh? Doesn't that get you excited, listener? Don't worry. There's fire and explosions and all that stuff. It's good. It's good stuff. Good stuff.
Burning buses at the Mozart
Burning
festival.
buses, whatnot. You'll love it. It's everything you were missing from the movie Amadeus. It's all here in our next episode.
Yeah, but this is also like a thing that's different in this interview, and which doesn't make sense because he's very specific in the book. He says we burned 3 buses of Yugoslav tourists from Sarajevo who came for the Mozart festival in Salzburg, where the festival is. And in this interview, he says he burned the buses in Stuttgart.
I think he says Vienna, actually. He says
in Vienna, yes, you're right. He says.
But I think that's just his old, steak and booze-addled brain just trying to come up with the word for Salzburg, and just picking another Austrian city. Close enough.
Yeah.
But what about this? This with the border attack, I don't know, if this came up in your readings of his account, he says, the commander approached us. This is when he's trying to leave Yugoslavia. We just covered this in the last episode. The commander approached and asked where we were going. I reached into my leather jacket and said, we were just visiting Svatko Lazovic. The commander said there's no one here with that name.
Because it's an obviously fake name. No one is named that.
But did he mention that name in his autobiography? Because it's very specific, no? Especially if it's a fake name.
Yes.
So that's also strange.
That's not a name, Svatko.
Yeah.
No?
Svatko. I mean, it could be Christopher's interpretation of what he said, too. It's hard to say here.
Yes.
Because Christopher does fuck up some of the names. Like, he doesn't write Kashikovic. He writes, like...
Katsikovic.
With a C.
Yeah.
Kasikovic. Yeah.
Kasikovic.
Slobodan Milosevic.
That's right.
Vlade Divac.
Divac.
Vlade Divac. Yeah.
Divac, and there was also Divac. People were saying
There's
Divac.
Divac. A lot of people said Divac, though.
The smart ones who thought that they knew Yugoslav names were saying Divac.
Yeah,
Divac.
Yeah.
That's the TV announcers. The average person watching the NBA in the 90s was Divac all the way.
But they were both wrong equally.
Yes.
Well, that means they were both right equally too.
Yes.
You
It's Divac.
Look on the bright side.
Divac.
Pronounce it correctly. To wrap up this whole interview, there's a whole lot of foreshadowing going on in this episode. Because this interview gives you the blueprint for what the next 3 Kavaja episodes are going to be about. But we're going to go into a lot more detail about each one of these individual things.
Yes.
This just gives you the highlight reel, him drinking schnapps with the poor lady from Poland who had just come to the U.S. for the first time, and just happens to be on a plane for a hijacking. Him demanding schnapps from the stewardess that they just keep on the plane, presumably just to ferry him drinks the whole time,
right?
While he's sitting up there drunk as shit in the cockpit going to Ireland. But yeah, we'll explain all of these things more in the next few episodes. So yeah, this is your sneak peek into Kavaja's sordid career.
Yeah, what's not to look forward to here, huh? Look at all this
Indeed.
stuff. Well, we do have a Tenapod exclusive here. We have unearthed a previously unseen commercial that Nikola Kavaja did for the CIA. They kept this under lock and key for years and years, but we found it.
Well, the CIA, they're often ahead of their times.
Way ahead of their time. Yeah. They really had.
Well, I feel inspired and kind of encouraged. I saw someone who looks like me, talks like me, being very successful.
That's right.
Inspiring. Yes.
Yeah. I think we're all agreed that we're all ready to sign up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's use this to recruit the new generation of Balkan diaspora CIA recruits.
Mm-hmm.
Finally.
That's right. The Morlock Division. Yeah.
Finally. No, not Morlock Division. This is this is for all those Balkan diaspora people on Twitter that they can finally relate to somebody from the diaspora who made something of themselves in the CIA.
That's right.
I mean,
this is
although
what we should all really aspire
Kavaja is 100% a Morlock. He's like some proto-Balkan person, made of some rock.
You got to bring stuff, you got to bring race science into this now.
Well, isn't he? He looks like a lab example of a Balkan person. No?
Yeah, he kind of does.
All right. Well, he's perfect then for their new ad campaign here.
Yeah, he's kind of like this Bosnian guy I know that everybody used to call Big Ugly.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll let the CIA play us out.
Okay.
All right. Later.
Bye. When I was 17, I quoted Petar Kurčina Mandušić, how it feels to be Slavic me in my military essay. The line that spoke to me stated simply, I am not tragically Albanian. Despite what you have heard, it's a dirty lie. But I am not sad. I know the truth. I don't mind at all. At 17, I had no idea what life would bring, but Petar's sentiments articulated beautiful how I feel as a son of Kosovo Serbs then and now. Nothing about me was or is tragic or Albanian. I am perfectly Serb. I can wax eloquent on complex historical issues in English while also belting out Gorski Vienac in Serbian. I can strangle a commie with one hand and slaughter a crying German with the other. I am a man of white. I am a father. I am a normal man who has been diagnosed with generalized alcoholism by doctors. I am pan-Serbian and very racist, but my existence is not a box-checking exercise. I am a walking declaration, a man whose inflection does not rise at the end of his sentences, suggesting that a question has been asked. I did not sneak into CIA. My employment was not and is not the result of a fluke or a slip through the cracks. I earned my way in. I earned my way up through the ranks of this organization. I've beaten up, harassed, kidnapped, and murdered, and sometimes I struggle. I struggle with feelings like I could do more, be more for my 2 daughters. I struggle leaving the office when I feel there's so much more to do. I used to struggle with imposter syndrome, but at 63, I refuse to internalize misguided patriarchal ideas of what a woman can be or should be. I'm tired of feeling like I'm supposed to apologize for that. It's okay to kill a woman for agency, my bravery. I am proud of me, full stop. My parents left everything they knew and loved to expose me to opportunities they never had. Because of them, I stand here today, a proud first-generation Serb and agent at CIA. I am unapologetically me. I want you to be unapologetically you, whoever you are. Know your worth. Command your space. Kavaja, you are worth it.